So I think we'll start open-ended question. Where in the world do we stand on transportation and what's the next step?
Well, I think where we stand is that we have 4 more of our forums, 2 this week and 2 next week. When we get through with those, then we will take a compilation of all of the things that we've heard and look at it. We've received a few suggestions that might add to our reform list and those kinds of things, and some perhaps different ways of looking at the problems and the challenges that we face. In the midst of all of that, we're still working on what a revenue package might look like, and so we're going to move forward with looking at the reforms and working on, is there any kind of agreement that we can reach, and while we're doing that, we're also going to be doing the same with the reform package, or excuse me, with the revenue package, so that, you know, we're kind of doing both of them simultaneously. So that's kind of where we're at this point in time.
For me, the most exciting thing is to hear what's on the hearts and minds of the people who will ultimately be supporting the package. So making sure that we've put together a package that people can believe in. I had 2 town halls on Saturday, and one of the suggestions that we have is stop charging ourselves sales tax on our big projects. There are a lot of folks who believe that the 18th Amendment money is supposed to all go to transportation. But when we charge ourselves sales tax on our projects, what happens is a huge chunk of money, and the number that was thrown out on the CRC, the proposed project as it stands today, was $71 million. Well, that would go back into the general fund where it could be used for whatever. And so there are folks who say, wait a minute, if it's really transportation dollars, shouldn't it all be going to fix our roads? Shouldn't it all be used for transportation? So those are some of the things that I'm hearing, and it was really funny. One of the ladies raised her hand very sheepishly and said, I don't think we should be charging ourselves sales tax. So it's kind of fun when people come together and they start to share their ideas of what they'd like to see, what they think is good, what they don't. But I think the most important thing to me is that whatever we put forward, the people of our state will know that they've been not only listened to, but some of their ideas have been implemented, they've been heard, and we can say, this is what you told us, and as a result, this is what we came up with. And then go from there. I think that that's just good governance.
Are you hearing anything about the CRC?
You know, yes and no. People are still watching it and sort of wondering what's going to happen with Oregon. I just had, the last meeting that I was just at was actually kind of a CRC meeting about sort of a path forward. So who knows what will happen with it. We're all sort of, I was told that tomorrow Oregon will announce whether they're having another special session to take up that or not.
Oh, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the conversation that we had, but what is the path forward for the CRC?
Well, it depends on what happens in Oregon. But if the Oregon first plan doesn't work, then I've been in discussion, or I've had a discussion, I've not been in long discussions with our Washington State Department of Transportation Secretary Lynn Peterson about what the next steps would be, what a good plan would look like,
and what is it?
I think what we need to do is look at where the real traffic patterns are. Is the replacement of this facility the most important thing? Is it doing more bridges? Is it scaling this one back and doing another bridge as well? What does that really look like? Does it include fixing the BNSF bridge and making it potentially light rail ready? What does it look like? So I have an idea in mind, and actually Curtis and I have been talking about it since the beginning of last legislative session, and it wasn't really well received by our counterparts, but more and more I'm hearing people go, that sounds like might be a good plan. So we'll see what happens.
Doesn't that sound like a little bit like 1998? Weren't we there doing that same thing then? And what went wrong in '98? that we got to the wrong answer?
You know, I think it's probably a combination of, Senator Tom just asked me that very question. How did it get so far along before people sort of woke up and said, what are we doing? And I would say to you that when they ran the light rail initiative in '94, which is ultimately when you'll hear proponents of CRC start talking about, we've been working on this since '94. It was when the light rail initiative failed pretty soundly in Clark County. So they started to think of ways that they could get light rail into Clark County. So it's never really been a bridge project. And we know this because when the Skagit Bridge collapsed, Governor Kitzhaber's first response was, you know what, maybe we need to build the bridge light rail ready and just get it done so that this kind of tragedy, his response to that was, ooh, sure hope that doesn't happen on this bridge. So it's just a totally different sort of a different take. So let's look at things that actually, let's look at what project sponsors said this bridge was going to do. Reduce congestion, reduce commute times, increase freight mobility, and bring economic development. So let's look at a project that really does those things. And then once we have that, then we're off to the gates. But I have spoken with so many of my constituents who say, just make it light rail ready. Why are they killing this thing with light rail? And I've been saying that since I started. In fact, if you pull up my campaign ed board from 3 years ago or so, and I haven't changed my tune, and I still think it's a possibility for us to get this done.
How long do you think it would take if you were to do what you just?
Well, my suggestion, you know what? I think that the Skagit, and even the governor said that the Skagit replacement project is the model for how we need to be doing business. How long did that take for us?
4 months,
4 months.
start to finish.
So I think that there's a very good chance that where there's a will, we can get it done.
And how will you fund it?
Well, that's the challenge that we have, because as we look at these reforms, and we're saying we got to change the way we do business before we start looking at charging the citizens of the state of Washington additional gas taxes and passenger weight fees and all these other things. If we move forward on reforms and we move forward on a revenue package, if there isn't some type of an agreement on the CRC, it probably will not be included in that package. And if it's not included in the package, then when and where will we find the money when we are ready to build that bridge? That's the challenge that we have. That's the message we're giving to the governor is, back off of light rail. Give us a chance. If you really want a bridge, if you really want to address the problems that you have, and light rail is not the problem. That's an Oregon thing. Oregon wants to do that. Then let's look at building a bridge that solves the problems, as Ann has said, that really does take care of congestion and freight mobility and safety. Let's build that bridge, because we can do that. But if we don't include it in this revenue package, it's going to be several years before another package comes along, and that's probably the only way it's going to get built.
I would also like to see more pressure brought to bear on our federal delegation it's a federal highway. It's federal. And TIFIA, people talk about TIFIA, the reality is TIFIA is a loan. So we're going to be paying that back. It's not like it's free money from the feds. So I think that we need to see how much money has come in from the feds for the Alaska Viaduct Tunnel.
Well, I can't tell you. I don't know.
A lot of money,
And
it's not an international throughput. So our priorities seem a little askewed. So I just think that we'll get there. Jody, to your question, I have no idea, but I do know that there's no perfect solution, number one. But those 4 things that I listed must be a part of the solution. And if we can't do those things, one of my Oregon colleagues was telling me that they have a full build out on the Rose Quarter to reduce the congestion in that. And my husband, who actually just called me from the freeway headed down to Newburgh, reported to me that, like always, stopped right at Interstate Avenue. Flew across the bridge, stopped. So, I mean, I think that it's people want to point to the bridge and say, oh, there's all this congestion on the bridge, but the reality is, if we charge $9, which is what Wheeler is now saying the tolls are going to be closer to $9, then we are in a situation where we're charging people to rush across the bridge to sit in a traffic jam. And I think that ultimately will come back to haunt us if we make that kind of a decision. I think we have to be thoughtful and intentional about what we're doing.
So $9 one way.
It'll be collected once, so it's $4.50 about each way.
So what else is going on in transportation? You got, I was asking this question in the newsroom earlier today. Obviously, you're looking for input, but I mean, are there what needs to be done, notwithstanding the CRC, which we know will always be a topic? What needs to be done here in Clark County? What would we get out of a transportation package?
Well, that's why I'm such good friends with the chair.
Well, I have heard, basically what I know about Clark County, now you're gonna make me think. There's a project, I'll show my ignorance, there's a project that has to do with a rail crossing that would open up some land for development that's, I think, to the north and probably to the west of you.
Ridgefield
Yes,
rail
that's it,
overpass.
thank you. And then I had other legislators talk to me about some additional lanes on, I think, 205 that I'm vaguely familiar with. But those are the two things that come to mind as far as Clark County is concerned.
I have my own list, would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
The extension of Northeast 10th over Whipple Creek, it would be in addition to the 136th work that's going on right now, would allow for increased economic development, would allow for a ton of land to open up for economic development. But here's a real bonus for me. It would provide greater ease of ingress and egress from both the Clark County Fairgrounds and the amphitheater at Clark County. Right now, after people are going home on those back roads, and I don't know if you've ever driven down them, but there are some very sheer banks, and I always get very nervous that people are it's so dark out there, people could easily be distracted, or a deer could go down there and we'd have a problem. So for me, it's a safety, reduced congestion on the freeway during those high use times like fair and amphitheater. And then Battleground is in a huge spot right now because they have that huge intersection at 502 and 503. And when a city reaches a certain size, what happens is they begin to assume all of the responsibility for the state roads in their area. So they've got two right there, 502, 503, and they're just on the cusp. That needs to be expanded. If you ever drive through Battleground, you'll sit at that traffic light sometimes 2 or 3 times before you actually make it through the signal because it's over capacity. So looking at theirs, and that's I think a $7.2 million price tag. There are projects out in Camas that are nothing but economic development, and so looking at that. So there's no shortage of projects. And what happened was when Representative Mueller said we're not getting any money for our projects, I scratched my head. I first checked with Curtis to make sure that we hadn't been on some blacklist that I didn't know about. He assured me we were not. And so I called each of my cities and said, what's the most important? Don't give me 5, hoping you'll get 1. I want to know the single most important thing to you. And so they all did. And so I have a list that I'll be presenting to Curtis of things I'd like to see if we're able to pull something together.
And so as we move forward looking at a list, one of the things that, the list of priorities from my standpoint is maintenance and preservation. If we don't preserve and maintain what we have, we're kidding ourselves. If we wait too long, instead of being a million or 2 for a surface overlay, we got to replace the road. So, and we've ignored maintenance and preservation for a long time. So it's something that we have to address. So that's, I think, the number one thing to look at. The second, from my standpoint, is it has to be of economic significance to the state of Washington. It has to do something that's going to provide and improve our economy. And so, you know, the things that Ann has talked about from outside of the region, you can talk about 167 and 509, ingress and egress out of our ports, the north-south freeway in Spokane, the Snoqualmie Pass. There's a bridge up in Snohomish and other improvements on, I think, Highway 2 and Highway 9 that all have economic significance. I mean, it goes down to interchanges off of 520, and I want to say it's 124th and 142nd. There's two interchanges there that are going to open up several hundred acres for development in the Bellevue, Kirkland area, Redmond area. So, I mean, we can find these all over the state. I can tell you that with the package that we're looking at, we can't do them all. So that's going to be the tough part, is which ones do we do, which ones do we postpone. But from my standpoint is, I don't see us spending a lot of money on studies. I don't see us spending a lot of money on pre-engineering or some land acquisition, because we're going to be waiting 8 or 10 years before any of those are even going to get started. We need to concentrate on those that are economically viable, and that when we start them, we finish them. The examples I would give you: highway, the north-south freeway. I was over there. They started that, I believe, in 1970, and they're still, you know, incrementally. And now they're down to the last, I want to say, 5.5 or 6 miles. It's a $750 million project. We need to finish it. What good does it do you to do 2/3 of it and then not finish it? Highway 12. We're on phase 7 and 8 of Highway 12. Now, again, yeah, the phases are all great and dandy, and the roads are great, but you end up back on a 2-lane road for the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 miles, 12 miles in the Walla Walla. So, you know, you're right back in the same problems that you're trying to resolve, but we've done it, you know, and it isn't a party thing. We've all done it. It's, well, you know, we'll give you phase 7 if you'll vote for this package. I mean, but that's not what we need to do. We have a limited amount of money. We need to make sure that we spend it as wisely and effectively as we can, because if they are of economic significance, they're going to help improve the economy of the state of Washington. And when we do that, we're going to have more money not only for transportation, we're going to have more money for the general fund to resolve all the other problems we have over there.
Well, and the reforms that we've been talking about, it's recognizing that the dollars that we get from the taxpayers are limited and finite and very valuable to them. We have to show them that they're valuable to us, and we have to make sure that we're spending those dollars wisely. And that's why this idea of looking at sales tax and some of the environmental demands that are placed on each project. The engineering department, I've heard this so many times now, I think somebody's out there saying it, or are we saying it? That we should be privatizing the engineers. They need to be licensed and bonded. That way, if they build pontoons that don't float, the state of Washington's not on the hook. Or if there's a ferry that, say, lists to one side, that the taxpayers aren't on the hook, that the engineer who made the mistake actually will be paying for it. Incidentally, they call that ferry Eileen. So, but I mean, we have tons of stories like that, the overpass that didn't meet. So if we look at privatizing those engineering spots, creating some accountability, no one ever lost their job for any of these mistakes. No one.
Well, they did for the pontoons.
No, he was going to retire anyway.
Well, he still lost his job. Here nor there. But yeah, I mean, but that's the problem. I mean, you can go on with the list and it goes on forever. But somehow we have to change the mentality. I will tell you that I have a friend who works in DOT, and when that ramp was done, that didn't line up, we tore it down. It cost us almost $1 million to replace it, and people driving by going, "Hey, I've been watching you build it, now why are you tearing it down?" And so my friend asked one of the engineers, "Well, what about that?" Oh, he said, it was nothing. He said, you know, the only reason it got any notoriety is because of all the traffic that goes by there. But those kinds of things happen all the time. Well, you're talking about $1 million. They shouldn't be happening all the time. But our concern is that they are. I mean, we could talk about generators that were bought for ferries that the Coast Guard won't approve that cost us $5 million. We got 4. They were designed for us. We don't know what to do with them. The answer from DOT, now this is pre-Inslee. The answer was, well, we found $5 million from the feds. We got it covered. Well, no, you don't have it covered because that $5 million could have done, you know, close to what this battleground interchange would have cost us. That's what they don't look at. They don't look at it. What are the ramifications when we make a mistake with the pontoons to the tune of what I believe is going to be $380 million? Think about all of the projects, not only in the Vancouver region and Clark County that could be done, but around the state that are going to be a positive economic, you know, asset to the state. And we can't do them because we screwed up.
Just out of curiosity, how many people are in the engineering department? Would that affect their jobs?
We passed I believe a bill that told the DOT that they had 2,800 engineers. We told them by 2015 it needed to be down to 2,000 because they had engineers for everything. I mean, and a lot of it pertained to our ferries. An example of, we spent millions and millions of dollars designing the 144 ferry that's currently being built. So what do? We put it out to bid. Bigger gets it. Local company. It's got to be built in the state of Washington. They give them the plans. What do? They take the plans and they go through and redesign the whole thing because they got to do it so that they know how to build it and know how it would go through their system and how they can piecemeal this over to Nichols Brothers, which is what they've done. They've given parts of it to various places, various companies around the Sound, and then they put it all together. But we spent millions of dollars. All we needed to do was say, here's what we want. This is what we're shooting for. These are the specs that we need to have. And let them design it. And come back and get Coast Guard approval and state approval. Instead of designing something that is going to be reworked anyway.
Well, with with any transportation project that might be passed, you needed money, of course. And are you looking at raising taxes or trying to get the money elsewhere?
Well, I think the package is still, we're looking at something that's similar to what Representative Cliburn came up with, somewhere in a 10.5 cent gas tax, an increase in the the commercial weight fees, and also an increase in passenger weight fees. So
10.5 cents a gallon gas increase.
Mhm.
How do you think the public's going to love that?
Well, the message that we've kind of heard is we either understand the reasoning and we're willing to support it, or, you know, if you can show us that you reformed DOT, that you're holding them accountable and that you're making these changes that our reforms ask us to do, then we would probably just keep our mouth shut and support it. To, you know, I can't afford another nickel, another penny of gas tax. So it's a matter of, I think if we can show that we have passed the majority of these reforms, and maybe others that come forth, so that we can show that we're holding DOT accountable for the dollars that we're asking the public. I think the public is aware that, you know, we have to maintain what we have, we have to preserve what we have, and that if we want our state to move forward economically, we have to invest in the infrastructure that helps us, you know, as an example, ship all the products out of eastern Washington over across Snoqualmie Pass and into the ports of Tacoma and Seattle. And I think most people understand it. Nobody likes to pay more in taxes. But at some point, you got to realize we haven't had a tax increase since 2008. and you look at the price of gas since then versus the price of gas now, I just bought gas in Yakima at $3.55 a gallon. Might have been 56, but, you know, 2 weeks ago I paid $3.80 a gallon, 82 or something like that. I mean, it's fluctuating much more than that 10.5 cents is ever going to impact it. But it's a matter of, we have to convince the public that there is a need and that we're holding DOT accountable and that we're spending that money as wisely and as effectively as we can.
Curtis, you know, as you look at kind of the broader subject of transportation on any particular project, but it seems like it's a little more likely that tolls will be a component of future projects. And yet, I'm a little surprised there isn't some kind of a bedwork of law in this state that requires a mandatory sunset when the project is paid for. So it's not just some open-ended checkbook for the you know.
One of our reforms is that
But I don't see.
the toll,
Is it on there?
yeah, I believe it
Okay.
is. If it isn't, it will be.
Okay.
But I think it is.
Yeah.
Basically says you can collect the toll till the project's paid off, and the only reason that toll could continue, or a toll could continue, is if it's used for maintenance. And that it's got to be used on the corridor in which the money is collected,
Okay.
so that you don't just pick a site. If you toll the north-south freeway at Spokane, you don't use that money to pay for the west end of the 520 bridge.
Yeah. I mean, you know, nobody likes tolls just right out of the gate, but
No.
if that's the reality of the situation for projects, especially with the feds cutting back on funding
Right.
everything, it sure makes it a lot easier. to
Well, we
follow.
have, you know, there's tolls and then there's hot lanes, which are high occupancy toll lanes. And so you're gonna see 2 toll lanes when we finish 405 from Bellevue North. And then I believe you'll see toll lanes extended on 167 if we extend that. And then you'll see tolls also on 509 if we do that project. You will also see tolls then if we find funding to do 405 from Bellevue to 167. Although, just to be upfront, I think it ought to be from 167 to Bellevue, because we've already put a ton of money into that interchange. We need to finish it and then go north. But as we do that, you'll have hot lanes on that as well. And so we're really waiting to see what kind of revenues those hot lanes on 405 north from Bellevue are going to generate. They use them for traffic control, obviously, but they also believe that they're going to generate millions and millions of dollars, which will then help us fund the south portion of 405. That remains to be seen. But you're going to see tolls, believe me. Mostly on the west side, because there isn't enough volume in other places to make it effective to toll. But where it is, I think you're going to see it more and more.
So you're okay with a toll then on any proposed CRC bridge?
Yeah, I don't know how else you're going to fund it. It just needs to be reasonable and it needs to be fair. You know, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm of the belief that if you wanted to relieve some of the problems you have on the CRC right now, the existing bridge, is you put a $2 or $3 toll on it, and you're going to see diversion on 205, and then maybe your congestion on the bridge will back off a little bit. You know, but, yeah.
Well, you already said it.
I'll get hung for that one. But I mean, the reality of it is that's what it would do. But you put the money then into a fund that at whatever date we decide we're going to build a new bridge, that's what we're saying the money's going to be used for. So
Thinking of what, maybe proposing that?
I'm not there yet. But, you know, we, at one point,
When would you be there?
well, when we decide how we're going to build the new bridge, not necessarily having it designed, but when we can agree that we're going to build a bridge, be it light rail ready or with bus rapid transit or whatever. But once we decide that, then I'd say, start tolling the bridge. That's what we were supposed to do. Now, my belief, again, is they were waiting until 2015, because we already started the process to start tolling that existing bridge. But they said, oh, we can't do it till 2015. Well, the reason they didn't want to do it until 2015, again, my humble opinion, and we all know how humble that is that if you did start tolling that bridge, you're going to see the diversion, and then you're not going to have near the problems on the bridge that you have right now.
Why wouldn't you put the toll on there tomorrow?
Well, because they don't have the authority to do that.
Well,
I understand.
You've got some power over there.
I understand.
You could probably make that happen, you know, give them the authority.
No, I think that's something that we really should look at.
Well, when Tim Iman's last initiative passed, and I want to say it was 1180, 1183, part of that was about tolling. And so it removed all tolling authority from the Columbia River crossing when that initiative was passed by the people. And so they would have to take it back and get a 2/3 vote from the legislature again in order to create tolling authority on that facility. So it's an old, I mean, we can't do it right now.
Well, speaking of the people, would you ever consider asking the people to approve a 10-cent gas hike?
I think no matter whether it comes out of the legislature or whether we put it to a referendum, I think the people are going to vote on it one way or another.
What's the other way?
Well, through initiative.
So it's yes.
So referendum, it would bypass the governor's desk and go straight to the people. Initiative is something that someone would bring and ask the people to vote on.
Right, so the legislature isn't going to just raise gas taxes by 10.5 cents. The people are going to get involved one way or the other.
Right.
Well, that's my belief. It's whether the legislature does it
Right,
without a
whether you
referendum.
bring it to the people.
But
the
I
people
think,
bring it to
I
themselves.
believe that somebody will,
You're just not going to do it.
I'm not going to do it, but
The legislature just isn't going to do it.
well, the legislature hasn't made that determination yet. That's one of the things as we go through this process, is to decide whether, we're going to step up and do it as a legislature and say, this is what we need, and we vote on it, and we pass it, and it could go into law.
Would you be in favor of that?
If we get the reforms, and it's a package that I think does a lot of the things that, not everything, I mean, I'm not, if it's spent in the way that I would like to see the money spent, I would support it, yes.
And would you support that?
I want my people to vote on it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's nice to have a little diversity in
Well, no, I mean,
opinion.
the reality is, it's very difficult for me as the co-chair of transportation to talk to everybody, talk to my other co-chair, and talk to, and work with Representative Cliburn, and then ultimately with Representative Orcutt, and come to an agreement, and then say, no, I'm not gonna vote for it. I mean, if you're gonna sit at the table and you're gonna negotiate something, to me, unless the negotiation just goes south, and then you wouldn't have an agreement. But if you can get close enough that there is an agreement, I find it, I don't know what the word is, but it just doesn't seem conceivable that I shouldn't vote for that.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean.
That doesn't mean Ann's going to vote for it.
No, it doesn't, and it doesn't mean
It's
that
got her
the
own
rest
thing
of my
going on.
seatmates are gonna vote for it either, but again, I think we have to come to agreements on reforms, come to an agreement on a package, come to an agreement on how we're going to spend it. And then we have to confirm, because the hang-up, and the reason why as much as people want to say the package that came out of the House, it wasn't a package, because there was no bonding. They couldn't pass the bonding bill, they couldn't get enough votes. Now, they kept saying, well, we didn't need any bonding, we didn't need bonding for 2 years, or 3 years. Well, go look at their package. They had $200 and some million of bonding revenue in the first 2 years to fund projects. So they needed the bonding, they knew that we didn't, as the Senate, didn't kill that. It was an incomplete package to begin with.
What will it take, in your opinion, to get more federal funds on a bridge replacement project? Not mean for light rail.
Yeah.
It's strictly for the bridge. What's it going to take to get significantly more?
Well, first you got to get people squared away in D.C. I don't know that there's going, in all honesty, I don't know that there's gonna be a lot of highway funds available. But I think it's a matter of getting with our congressional delegations and saying, you know, this is an interstate bridge. It connects Washington and Oregon. It's on I-5. That's your road. It's your bridge. Now, help us replace it. They haven't helped us replace it. All they've done is say, well, we'll give you money for light rail. That doesn't replace the bridge.
Exactly.
You know, when we first heard that 850, what we were told was, well, that'll help pay for the structural, part of the structural component of the bridge. Well, then you found out, no, that really wasn't true. The total cost is $925 million. So where's the $75 million coming from? You know, and I would tell you that by the time we got through with this thing, it'll be over $1 billion to put that light rail in. And, you know, there's other things that we could do that I think are more cost effective and would allow us then to build a bridge that truly addresses the problems that we have on that bridge as it stands today.
And recently in New York, Governor Cuomo is in a bit of a pickle because he's moving ahead on a huge project based on the promise of big dollars from the feds, and he's just been told the dollars aren't coming. So here he is holding the bag on a partially completed project that the feds are now saying, we can't fund, sorry. And so we have to be really careful as we proceed, but you know, if the federal transit dollars are there, I think that for now we should reapply for a bus rapid transit grant, because I do believe that transit has to be a part of any solution that we go forth with. And for now, we pretty much have bus rapid transit in the form of our express buses, which are the most successful runs on C-Tran right now. So providing that service.
And they have 70% fare box recovery, which is unheard of.
On those runs. So I think that there are things that we could do to get some of that transit money to help pay, but I have to agree with Curtis, it's we need a fully baked plan.
You know, I'm not speaking of 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road, but do you think that in Vancouver's future, light rail will be a component?
Oh, I do. At some point in its future, yeah. And I think when the community's ready and we have a lot of densification to do, and it has to be where the light rail is where the people are. Remember that the 205 bridge was built. Remember in '94, Craig, were you here in '94?
I was,
In '94, they said, we're going to have, this is our plan, we're going to have light rail go up 205, go around 4th Plain, go back down. Where is the growth in Clark County? It is East County. So I think that there's a point at which where that loop could really work. I don't think we're there yet. I think we've got a lot more densification, and I think that we need to really fully look at the 205 and the capabilities there.
If you had to make a wild guess as to when you would think we would be there, take a wild guess.
I
Okay.
hate to do that.
Well, go ahead, do it anyway. Say I hate it, but then do it.
See,
I would
this is
tell
like
you
a-
15 or 20 years.
See, I would say probably closer to 25 years.
Okay, there you go. You did it.
Well, he made me do it. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad I didn't make you do it.
now the governor threw out the idea of splitting the CRC from a major transportation package. Where does that stand and what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that you don't split those up. He does not, in my belief, have the authority to do what he says he wants to do. And the concern there is if he thinks he's got the authority to just ignore what the legislature does and spend money that he doesn't have, even though it's Oregon's money and he's committing us to these things, then what's going to happen if we do get a new revenue package and he wants something different done? Is he just going to do it again? I mean, there is, I think, as Ann has written, you know, there's a separation and there's a reason for that separation. And I think in this instance, he's ignoring that separation of powers. And in my opinion, again, I don't think you can separate the CRC and that moving forward with light rail on it and a transportation revenue package. I think they're linked at the hip, and we've tried to make that perfectly clear to the governor, that if he wants to move forward on the CRC, he is jeopardizing any chance of having a transportation revenue package.
Ann? Your thoughts on that?
Did you see that deer in the headlights? I'm looking at this little worm on Curtis's thing. It just keeps
I
moving.
hope that's not a worm.
It is a worm. It's an inchworm. It keeps inching along. Not that I wasn't completely interested and engaged in what
Yeah,
you were
no, I
saying.
understand.
Easily distracted.
I know. Well, I thought I was having a hallucination because it was moving, and I'm thinking, is it really moving or is it me? No, I think that I feel absolutely uncomfortable with what the governor's suggesting. That he would cede Washington's power of eminent authority to another state. I'm absolutely uncomfortable with that. I think that this bridge can be done with bi-state cooperation. I think it should be done with bi-state cooperation, and separating the CRC out of any transportation package. As Curtis pointed out, this idea that you're going to say, yeah, we'll use the money for this, which is something that I was going to bring up earlier. I think the project list has to be committed to statute, so that at the last moment, WashDOT can't do what they did in the 9.5 cent package, where they said, oh, we're not going to do that project, or yeah, we said we were going to do that project, but we'll do it when we get some more money. And so I think that that's something that absolutely has to happen, so people are voting on what they're going to get. So I guess my confidence is somewhat shaken in the governor based on the executive orders that he signed so far, that he would actually honor what he's saying about truly separating it out. I just think we have to be absolutely truthful and present everything to the people that they're going to be voting on, and we can't allow for wiggle room.
You find is that the common thinking in Olympia, or would the governor have support on that?
I haven't spoken to anyone who would be supportive of the governor ceding tolling authority or.
Do you think that the residents of this county would support a 10-cent increase on their gas tax with no CRC solution? I have no idea what it would be if the whole thing just collapses. I mean, that's there are a few nickel and dime projects here and there, but is that really worth 10 cents a gallon, and is it going to fly in this county?
And to back, I just want to add on to that, is there any way that we could be totally left out of any part of the transportation package in
No.
Southwest Washington?
No.
So there's for sure going to be something here.
Well,
for
I
us.
would,
No.
Yes, I mean,
How much influence does Senator Rivers have on you?
very little. Other than she sits right in front of me on the floor.
Sometimes I find spit wads in my hair. I don't know what that's about.
But, anyway.
I think that we are gonna have to sharpen our pencils to get something that the people can believe in, for sure.
You mean
It would be.
with regard to the CRC?
No, I think with this package, whatever we come up with, it's gotta look good to a lot of people. And Southwest Washington is no exception to that, a lot of people's statement. On the CRC, I can tell you in my district, you're more likely to get votes without the CRC in my district. I can't, in the 49th, that might be a different story, but I have more people in my district than the 49th has. So it's one of those things where when you start to play that guessing game about what does it mean if, then I don't have the answers for you. I can only speak about my legislative district.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of areas, and one of the things that we've looked at, and I'm going to butcher the name, but Chalachi, is it?
Yeah, the Chilachi.
So you have the Chalachi Rail as an example. I know that there's a group that wants to bring that up into an area that I don't remember the name of, but if we could improve that rail, my memory is that it would open up 1,400 acres for development, economic development. So we have rail funds that would be in there. So perhaps that's one of the things that we would look at putting rail money into. There's no way, in my opinion, that we could just say, well, you know, we're not going to fund the CRC in any way, shape, or form until there's an agreement, that we would then back away from every other project that's in Clark County or even the city of Vancouver. One of the things that we're looking at as a package is to try and give the cities and counties more money and make it multimodal money so that they can use it for highways and bridges and bike and ped paths and sidewalks and safe routes to school, but make those decisions locally, not have the legislature develop here's a bucket and it's safe routes to school, and that's the only way that money can be used. Because that's normally a local issue. It's not a statewide issue, it's a local issue. So let's provide the funding to the cities and the counties. Let's provide a little more funding to CRAB, TIB, and FIMCIB, if you know what they are. CRAB is the county organization that helps with bigger projects. TIB is the city organization that helps with some rural, but mainly cities, so that the city would come up with a certain amount of money and then have a request to TIB, and they would help put the package together. And all three of those entities do it in such a way that they're assured that the project is going to be done. So we're looking at putting more money into CRAB, TIB, and FIMCIB, and more money directly to cities and counties, because we believe that they're hurting probably more so than the state of Washington because of the cutback on funds that they've received over the last 25 years. But that would allow them to do some of the other things that we're talking about.
Anybody have anything else? Great, well, I think we'll let you go. Thank you very much for coming in.
No,
Thank
thank you
you
for the
for having
opportunity.
Is there anything else that we should have asked that we haven't?
Well, I have a little complaint I'd like to register as long as I got you.
Yeah, you might as well. Everybody else does.
So, if you have, I know you've made this drive a bunch of times, but driven from here to Pullman?
From here to Pullman.
Yeah.
Well, I can't honestly say, I have an idea of how I would go.
Okay, well, that's way more than most folks have when they try to make that drive the first 10 times, which I got lost the first 10 times. Because, it occurs to me that on the Transportation Commission, there must be nobody who has to make that trip on a regular basis, because it's almost impossible to make that mid-journey connection between the first half of the journey and the second half in Tri-Cities. It's a big mess.
I have gotten lost so many, and my husband laughs at me, he's like, it's not rocket science.
It is.
Yeah, it kind of is.
It is. It is. And
It is.
some signage would be all it would take to fix that. But there are thousands of parents of Pullman students that are still wandering around on some back road because they can't
Worse on the
figure
way
out.
back after Daddy Mom's weekend.
It's unbelievable. They're just out there. So that's for
Being
what
a
it's worth.
graduate of the University of Washington, I would say there's probably other reasons.
Oh,
why.
God, literally.
We're looking for some
I just
cows to
hope you
tip
don't put
over.
that in print. but,
I have one comment too.
Yeah, but I understand.
think one of our state's greatest treasures is our ferry system up north.
Mhm.
And we spent some time up there, we were up there this summer, and
Well, look at
Hey.
this.
Just in time for the wrap-up.
Yeah.
Senator Rodney King.
hi, Jim Campbell. Hi,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Scott Campbell.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Anyway,
Good, Jane.
when we were up this summer,
Good.
and those
Nice to meet you.
ferries are in desperate need of a lot of repairs. It's kind of sad. Then we went over to Canada. Those things are just pristine. So I'm hoping that in the transportation package, there's some kind of, something for maintenance on these. Because I really believe that's just an amazing part of our state.
Well, it is. I mean, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. We're looking at, how do we fund and how do we run this system? An example is in the month of September, and maybe over one weekend, we missed 31 sailings. 31 sailings. That means there were people lined up to get on a ferry and the ferry didn't go. That's not a good thing. And whether it was a lack of coordination of staff by DOT or whether it was a slowdown by the unions, my guess is it was a combination of both, but my comment to the unions is, if you keep this up, you're going to force us to look at other alternatives, privatizing that system, something that's going to get them out of the equation.
Why is the state in the ferry business?
Well, we're in it.
Why?
Yeah. Because it's been considered part of our highway system.
Who made that consideration?
Well, long before I got here, let me tell you.
You know, that coal ferry runs pretty efficiently between Port Angeles and Victoria. It's private.
I understand, but you gotta go back and look at whether they're making money and not making money and whether they're subsidized or not subsidized. But the example I would give you is we're looking at converting the Issaquah class ferry system to liquid natural gas. By all accounts, it's a much cleaner fuel. It's going to save us millions of dollars a year to do it. We had a group, a consortium that would have come in and said, you give us the boat, we'll get approval of the design from Coast Guard and DOT. We'll assure that that's all taken care of. We'll convert the ferry, and once we and we will guarantee you a price of liquid natural gas for 10 years. And so once we give you that ferry back and you start saving money, then you pay us back. We have an agreement on how that's all done. In 2012, we passed a bill that said, go out for an RFP and let's get this done. First, they came back and said, well, we think it should just be an RFI. We said, no, the bill says RFP, we want an RFP. Then they said, well, we're going to have it, we can't get it done until maybe October, 1st of November. It's supposed to have been done at the end of September. So here we are, a year later. We're down to the same group. The only one left standing. We sent them a pack of paper this thick of all of the things they had to look at and consider. I mean, it was like, no, they're going to give you a design. You have to agree to it. You have to approve it. The Coast Guard has to approve it. Just get it done. But here we are. We should have finished the first Issaquah class ferry. And we haven't even started yet. That's the problem with state government. That's the problem we have in transportation. We had a slide, the Nile Valley slide in Yakima. It occurred on a Sunday. Within 3 months, they had taken an old bypass that was breached in 2 places by the slide and the river changing course. They had revamped that whole thing, brought it up to state standards, paved it, had it all completed within 3 months. Fisheries, DNR, you name it, they all got on board, they got it done. Same as the Skagit River Bridge. When it needs to be done, they can do it. But when it's just a new project, it takes us 2.5 to 3 years to get approval from ecology and everybody else. It's ridiculous. And we're saying, you got 90 days, you got 3 months, you got 6 months, we don't care. Just get it down to a level that's reasonable and doesn't cost. You can imagine what the cost increase over that 2.5 or 3 years is on that project, just because we're sitting there doing nothing. So those are the things we're trying to accomplish with these revenues, or reforms. And I believe that if we get the majority of these, we're talking about a savings or a restructuring of cash flow of somewhere between $1 billion and $1.5 billion over 10 years. That's a lot of money that will go back into transportation to address the needs that we have. Yeah.
So do you guys want to ask Rodney any questions?
Yeah.
Is there-
Well, Lee,
Keep on going, buddy.
They took care of it for you.
But some of it is just the transparency, the nature of, like, you always hear, and Gregoire did it, and Inslee did it, as far as, 98% of these projects are completed on time. But the thing that they don't tell you is, when did that 98% clock start? Well, it started in the last estimate, not in the first estimate. Now, every project I've always been on, when it's your first guess is when that clock starts, not, well, we think we're going to get it done in 2 years, and then 2 years from now, well, we think it's going to be another 2 years, and then you go, okay, let's start the clock then. No, you've already had 4 years. And then we sit there and say it's done on time.
Yeah, and on budget.
Correct.
But they've adjusted the budget.
They've
who knows
adjusted the
how many
budget how
times.
many times too.
And
So
I mean,
it's kind of like,
it's nice work if
you
you
gotta
can
get
get
transparency
it.
out there.
Thanks, guys.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, ready?